Welcome to Drop the Shades, the space where we dim the noise, quiet the chaos, and reclaim our inner balance. Welcome to another episode of Drop the Shades. I have the pleasure of having Lauren Callahan with me today. She is a nutrition coach, an integrative wellness consultant, as well as an ultra athlete. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, thank you, Joseph.
Thank you. So, Lauren, tell me a little bit about your journey and how you came to do what you do right now.
Yeah, so I love I feel like the title of your podcast, Drop the Shades, is a very good description of how I ended up where I am today. So I do nutrition consulting, but I actually was a therapist several years ago. And in the middle of being a therapist, I was trying to run a marathon. So just happened to coincide. But Um, I eat healthy, I train, I do all the things. I should not have an issue running a marathon, but actually for 4 years, I tried to run one and failed every time. And I understand it's not really a failure. You try all whatever, but I wanted to finish.
Sure,
And
sure.
so in the middle of that, and me seeing doctors, seeing physical therapists, all the people trying to figure out what my issue was, I stumbled down this rabbit hole of gut health, which we can certainly go more into. We will. But long story short, improving my gut health launched me athletically. Okay, so I ran my marathon and then I did a 50-mile ultra right after that. I did an Ironman. I did another 50-mile ultra. I did another Ironman. I did that all within 1 year. So certainly that was cool. But in the middle of that, I actually discovered how improving my gut health exponentially helped my mental health. So I was able to feel calmer. I was able to drop those shades internally,
Yeah.
mental clarity, all of the things. And that was the moment where I said, oh, okay, this is really, really important. And I wanted to bring it into my life as a therapist, into my work. Found it to be difficult. We've got scope of practice issues there. And so
Mhm.
eventually transitioned into the nutrition space so that I could help people, women in particular, in a different capacity.
Sure. What a great story. I have a daughter who is getting her master's in clinical psychology, and she's looking to get into that field. And I think it is a much needed specialty. And you may or may not know that my platform is very much based on mental health, because that seems to be the one thing we seem to focus on so many other things in our lives, career and happiness and all this stuff. And mental health seems to be something that we don't often talk about, or it's a taboo. Certainly in a lot of cultures it is. We don't talk about depression and all that other stuff. And that's obviously food for, another hour of conversation. But
Well,
I'm
I love that you say that too, because in the mental health world, it's almost the same thing, but with nutrition, right? Like, what does
right.
nutrition have to do with mental health, right? We don't go there. Like I said, I met with some scope of practice issues, and what I found
Yeah,
out was it's 100% within the scope of mental health. So I experienced that maybe from a different perspective.
sure. And I think it's so you kind of transition. You're not in the therapy field anymore.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're now a nutrition coach, and there's been a lot of I would say research that's been done in the field of our microbiome and
Mhm.
how important our gut flora is. And I've had Dr. Sugar on my podcast before, and he has talked about that as well. Tell me a little bit about, I know in your teachings, you talk about a few critical things. You talk about the importance of fiber. Talk to me about fiber and what role does it play in our life?
Sure. So right off the bat, one of the things that I discovered the most quickly for me personally, and then later saw this 100% with every single one of my clients, was that the first and number one thing that you can do to improve your gut health is to eat more fiber. And so, you've had, you've talked about this on your podcast, obviously, but maybe as the recap, your gut is your second brain. It is 100% connected to your mental health, your cognitive clarity, your energy, your immunity, your gastrointestinal health, right? It is related to everything. And people ask me, well, how do you know if you need to improve your gut health? Well, does anything in your life feel off? Let's talk about your gut, right? Because it's just related.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with fiber, I mean, in a nutshell, your gut is full of bacteria, and bacteria is a good thing, as you know. I mean, we are a very aseptic society. People are very scared of bacteria, but the fact is, we have so much good bacteria in our bodies and in our gut in particular. The bacteria outnumbers our human cells in our gut. Well, the thing that
Sure.
feeds that bacteria is fiber. Fiber feeds the good bacteria. So if you do not give it fiber, you are starving it. So you have to
Right.
give it that. And one of the reasons, this is a little bit of a nuance, but very important. Some other things that you can do to help your gut are to give it hydration, but that includes hydration from food. So things like, hydrating kinds of foods like cantaloupe and, berries, things like that. And then another one would be foods that have polyphenols and antioxidants.
Mhm.
These things tap into your body's ability to self-heal. Well, when you look at that, the only place that you get those from are the same foods that you get fiber from. So if you focus on putting fiber first in your diet, not only are you getting that food for the bacteria, you're feeding the bacteria in your gut, but you're also giving it the electrolytes, you're giving it the polyphenols and antioxidants. You are helping your body to heal by giving it foods that are fiber first.
Sure. How much? So I'm 59. How much fiber should I have in my diet on a daily basis?
Yeah, so general recommendations. This is kind of the across the board thing, which will be a little different for everybody. But in general, women need to get 25 grams, and I'm sorry, and men need to get 30. How did I just say that? I meant to say women need 25, and
Yeah.
men need to get 35. That will
Yeah.
be different. For example, like I'm in the ultra endurance sports space. Once you start running hundreds of miles, you need to take in more calories. Well, you need more fiber at that point. But
Yeah.
in general, that's the recommendation. And what we know is that 97% of Americans don't come near that number. I mean, we are looking at most people only get 12 to 15 grams of fiber.
Sure.
We are amazingly obsessed with getting enough protein while we're completely ignoring this need for fiber.
Right. Um, and of course, ultra processed foods, we all know they're bad for you, right? And unfortunately, we live in a culture where we want everything yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it takes, more than a second for, a website to upload on our phone, we become pissed off. And, we are so focused on expediency and speed in everything. And obviously, fast food comes into the picture here, right? It takes so much less time for me to, even order it on my app and just drive to a fast food restaurant, pick up my food and go, versus start with raw ingredients and macronutrients
Mhm.
and make my meal, right? And some of it I think is, socioeconomical. Fast food is cheaper.
Yeah.
And also we have people who are double income families. Both parents are working, and by the time you're done at work, both of you are exhausted and you don't feel like spending 45 minutes to make food, right? And of course, I'm stating the obvious, right? What are some simple ways for us to wean ourselves off of ultra processed foods? Because obviously, making big steps is not recommended. I'm a huge fan of
Mhm.
atomic habits, right? Small steps at a time and build on them, right? For the person who's has to work for a living, how do we do that? How do we start that process?
That is a fantastic question. And I love this because I brought I was driving my kids home last night from one of their later night after school activities. And my husband is finishing up dinner at home, and they are begging me for Chick-fil-A and McDonald's. And I'm that mom that's saying, no, it's so bad
Yeah,
for you. We have good home cooked
yeah,
food at home. So, okay, but so that aside, yes. So I would say two things for that. First, maybe is a mindset change, and then I want to give a very specific tool. So the mindset change around that is that it seems counterintuitive. Like, yes, the food is cheaper, but honestly, a lot of that cheaper food, it does not leave you satiated. So yes, I understand that the cheap burger is cheaper, right? Or a bag of chips seems cheaper than maybe like an apple and some almonds. However, you will continue to be hungry for those chips. Like you will never want to stop, right? Like it is not self-limiting in the way that an apple and almonds, for example, are limiting. Like you will feel full and you'll be
yeah,
satisfied until the next meal. I mean, I would call that a snack for sure, but you'll be satisfied until the next meal instead of needing more in between. So when you look at it that way, it's quite possible that you can spend less eating healthy. So
sure.
mindset change there. But as far as a simple tool, I am a firm believer in boring is consistent and consistent is convenient. So actually, as far as what I eat on a daily basis, it's usually the same. And maybe not the exact same foods, but the same framework. So for example, I choose to eat fiber only. So I only eat a plant-based diet, maybe a couple exceptions here and there, but usually plant-based only. My husband does not. He eats a lot of plants, but he is not only fiber only, only plant-based. So at dinner time, we have a very simple framework. It is a whole grain, a roasted vegetable, and a protein. And so for me, that protein almost every single night is sauteed tofu. Some people are like really weirded out by that. You have to get the right kind and you have to cook it right and it actually tastes really good. And I know this because I've given it to all my family members and they're like, oh, this is actually really good. So that aside, that is what I have almost every night, except for the nights that maybe I have a little more time and I feel a little more creative. But that is always the go-to. And it is so simple. And for my husband, it's, maybe chicken or fish. So that's it. A whole grain, a roasted vegetable, and a protein. And we eat that all the time. It is boring, but it's consistent and so it's convenient. And so it becomes very easy. And when you get into that rhythm, yeah, you'll have those days where you have a little more time and you have a little more creativity and you'll try a new recipe. But for the most part, you've completely eliminated decision fatigue. It's the same thing
Sure.
for lunch. I have two go-tos for lunch. I'll make a pot of lentils at the beginning of the week. Lentils are one of the best foods you can possibly eat for yourself. It is one of the healthiest things you can eat. Or so I'll either have those lentils and throw like an avocado and maybe some other leftover vegetable, or I'll have a salad and I'll open a can of beans. Okay, like it's
Yeah.
so simple. But maybe I made a dressing on the weekend that's healthy. So it's one of two things every single day. Boring is consistent, but consistent is convenient. And when you consistently have convenience, your framework, your couple of go-tos, then yes, you'll have those days where you have more freedom and creativity and you'll try a new recipe and make it a little more fun.
Um, are you now as a person who you don't eat any animal protein, correct?
Correct. Yeah, with occasional exceptions. I mean, I'd say I eat like salmon about once a week usually.
Okay, so how do you account for the essential amino acids and the good fat that we need in our diet?
Yeah, oh, that's such a great question. Okay, so with amino acids, a lot of people get kind of hung up on but plants don't have a complete amino acid profile. First of all, you don't have to have a complete amino acid profile in one meal. As long as you have it over the course of a day, you're fine. Okay, because your amino acids, they sit around in a pool basically until they need to get used. So your body will pull from that pool to do what it needs to do. As long as you are getting sufficient protein throughout the
Mhm.
day and varied, okay, you are fine. Now,
Yeah.
what I will say, I will throw in maybe a little bit extra here. So I did, when I went plant-based, completely plant-based. Okay, so I went from fiber first to fiber only. Okay. Fiber first was working for me until I decided to be a really ultra endurance athlete and train for 100 milers. And I was putting a ton of stress on my body. I'm in my mid 40s and it wasn't working. Okay. It was too much stress. So I switched to a fully plant based, so fiber only kind of diet. And I cannot tell you how much the inflammation and stress melted. I mean, it's the best word I can use. It melted away from my body. However, I did run into a little bit of an issue with the muscle protein synthesis. Getting enough protein for the most part, but had a hard time triggering that muscle protein synthesis. Okay. So at that point, what I did do was I added a natural bioactive peptide, not the synthetic injectable stuff. I'm not
Right.
personally not a fan of that, but natural ones that are extracted from food. I added that and it helps with muscle protein synthesis. For me, that was the trick to being able to really be on a fully plant-based diet and not have issues with muscular recovery at all. So that was helpful. But again, maybe circling back to that question, you can get all the amino acids that you need. Now, I know that there are folks who will say, okay, but plant-based protein is not as easily absorbed or as bioavailable as plant-based protein. But here's what I can tell you. You will eat more food on a plant-based diet. So it honestly, like it levels out because yeah, you can just eat more food. So you're much better able to get in a sufficient amount of protein. So for me, it's a non-issue.
Okay. So it's interesting because one of the uh, my favorite quotes is, "If you don't eat food as medicine, you're going to eat medicine as food."
Oh, yes, yes. I love that.
It, it's interesting to me because you're kind of describing that you eat food as medicine,
Yeah.
and you're not so worried about variation and having different kinds of protein. You've kind of opted out of having to deal with too many choices for your meals, and you've prioritized other things that are important to you, right?
Yeah, and
So I
that's,
want to
busy mom kind of life, right? Or busy anybody kind
yeah,
of life. Yeah.
sure, sure. So it's interesting. It's a question I've always wanted to ask ultra athletes like you. You run what, 7,500 miles. Um, why? What does it do for you?
I love that. That is a question I've been trying to answer forever. Okay, I'll tell you the different
Because I don't
reasons.
wake up with that urge.
What's that? What was that, sir?
I said, I don't wake up with the urge to run
Oh,
7,500 miles or even 3 miles. So I don't
you
have the
know,
knees for it.
I can give some different answers because I think, excuse me, that the answer has evolved over several years. So when I first started running, when I moved in with who is now my husband,
Mhm.
he lived within a mile of two different trailheads on the Wild Azalea Trail, which is the longest trail in Louisiana where I live. So I was right there. I was right there at a trail. So running on a trail is way different than running on a road. So for
Sure.
me, this was just getting out in nature. And I grew up in a city. I grew up in New Orleans. So just being in the woods all the time. I mean, that was like dropping the shades, right? Like that is so healing to the soul. And so it really just began with a love and still is 100% just a love of being out in nature. Now, the amount of miles, man, that is just, it is personal growth. I grew up very much, I'd say just a very limiting, self-limiting mindset. And I just slowly began to, sorry, I can tell you the exact moment actually. So my husband has a friend who, they grew up together, and it's kind of like you grew up together and then all of a sudden you're in your 40s and 50s and you're like, whoa, who did you become, right? And not that this guy
Yeah.
is different, but he came into town, he runs a 50-mile race, wins the thing, and leaves. And we know the guy, right? And he's like this immortal to us, right? And we're like, wow, how do you run 50 miles? Wow. And then all of a sudden we were asking the question, what are we capable of? And I'm asking the question, what am
Yeah.
I capable of? And this was a big
Sure.
shift for me to get to a place in life and not be thinking about how do I conserve and how do I be smaller, which has always been my go-to kind of thinking. And now to be asking the question, what else can I do? And so I was determined to not just run a marathon, but to run a 50 miler. And then once I did that, I couldn't even imagine running a 100 miler before that. But then I did 50 and I'm like, well, I feel like I just did half, right? Like, well, now I got to go
Yeah.
do the whole
Yeah.
thing. I got to do 100. And then once I did it,
Right.
my goal was to do 200. I've tried it. I got to 140, so I haven't actually achieved that goal yet. But it's always been just this growth mindset. What else am I capable of?
Right. It's funny. I tend to, and I don't know if other people do as well, but I tend to dream of things that I cannot do. So I dream of running, and I don't have any. So, and I also dream of swimming in open waters. I can
Um,
swim but in open waters, forget it. I would probably drown. I would sink just like a rock. So, anyways, it's a funny story.
Okay, Joseph,
Now,
I have to tell you then. So when I actually signed up, I told you about when I did my first full Ironman. But
yes,
maybe about a year or two before that, I did my first and only half Ironman. It was actually my first triathlon ever, and I didn't know how to swim when I signed up for it. So how's that
you
for
did.
putting yourself out there, trying the new
That's
thing?
and it's funny because I just heard of someone who drowned doing
Yeah,
a triathlon,
yeah.
and I guess it's because the water, there's so much congestion in the water, and there are people all around you that you can easily get kicked and go underwater. So I never realized that risk. So you
Yeah,
taught
yeah,
yourself.
there's so sad. I mean, I don't know how often that kind of thing actually happens.
Not very
Yeah, I mean, it's
often,
always a
thank
risk, obviously. Yeah, yeah, that was very sad.
you. Yeah. So you taught yourself how to swim?
Yeah, I did.
That's
In
pretty
open
incredible.
water too. I went straight to open water.
Yeah. What was the total length that you had to swim? What distance?
So in the half Ironman, you have to do 1.2 miles, and then in a full Ironman, you do 2.4 miles.
Oh, okay. That's what my daughter-in-law is training for. I
Okay.
believe it's the full Ironman.
Yeah,
So we'll see.
yeah.
She's doing phenomenal. Now, Lauren, tell me all about something that I know very little about, and that is fermented foods.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. So fermented foods. Yeah, I like to be a little bit careful about this one because some people, their systems are not quite ready for fermented foods. However, in my experience, when you do all the things to begin healing your gut, it can be very surprising what you're okay with, right? And so what I mean by that is, so for example, we've got a lot of folks saying that they need to go gluten free, and some people truly do. And then for a lot of people, it's really not so much. I mean, we know that gluten is a little irritating to the gut for sure. You probably don't want to have that all the time. But for a lot of people, once they do the work of healing their gut, they're actually okay with eating gluten. And so with fermented foods, that's kind of the same thing. Like once you do some other things to begin healing your gut, like eating fiber first, getting those foods with fiber, the hydration, the polyphenols and antioxidants, you begin
Hmm.
that process of healing your gut, reducing stress. That also is reducing the ultra processed foods. All those things are very destructive to your gut, right? So then at that point, the fermented foods are likely fine. But yes, whereas fiber feeds good bacteria in your gut, fermented food puts more good bacteria in your gut. And so
Okay.
ideally, you would be having one fermented food a day, and ideally that would be varied. So like if you ate yogurt, for example, every day, I mean that's okay, but it's not varied, right? But the best case scenario would be that one day maybe you're having yogurt, and then another day you're having kombucha, and another day you're having kimchi, and another day you're having like kefir. I hear that everyone says it
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Sauerkraut, like an actual fermented sauerkraut. So ideally, you'd be doing something different every day, just to give your gut some good bacteria. You could go put your hands in dirt and give it good bacteria as well. But we're talking about fermented foods.
Right. Um, are you a fan of taking probiotics and prebiotics supplements, or do you just do it naturally with your food?
That is a fantastic question too. So usually, yes, that is one I would always say that you should definitely have a conversation with your doctor about. And the reason is because in most cases, probiotics are usually very helpful. However, with some people who are dealing with chronic disease, for example, like type 2 diabetes or something with their heart, or several other kind of chronic diseases, even though theoretically the probiotics should be really helpful, like it does the things that should be really helpful, actually sometimes it can, when you have that chronic disease, it can work in the opposite direction. So
Mhm.
it's just that is one of those things that usually it's a good idea, but you should definitely talk to your doctor before you take one. Personally, I do. I take some supplements, but even the supplements I take, I don't even like to take them every day. I like take them every other day, and that's not
Right.
super scientific. Other than,
Right.
I don't like to overdo it, so I take a probiotic every other day, and then the prebiotic. No, I basically just stick with fiber because you're usually if you're doing fiber first, you're usually getting all the prebiotics that you need.
Right. Now, I meant to ask you, Lauren, you have kids, correct?
I do, I do.
How, how many and how old are they?
Yeah, so my husband and I, we are a blended family. So the two that are like mine. I have a daughter and a son. My daughter is about to graduate high school in 2 weeks. Oh
Um,
my goodness. And then I have a son who's in ninth grade. Um, and then I have five stepchildren. So the youngest is in ninth grade, and then the rest are graduated. So at one point, yeah, I was doing stay-at-home mom with seven kids whenever we had them, so it was quite busy.
wow, that's a lot of work. So how has your lifestyle and your husband's lifestyle impacted these kids? How have they responded to it?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. Gosh, okay, full transparency, some days you just wonder, are we doing anything here? Um, but then certainly, you see those moments where you think, oh yeah, this is why I do what I do. The other day, so my daughter, she started running cross country, which that in and of itself. Sorry, let me back up. When they were younger, it was one of those things where we just took our kids on everything that we did. Like we're going to the
Sure.
trail, we're riding bikes today, we're hiking or whatever.
Yeah.
You guys are coming, right? But
Yeah.
again, we're out in the woods. Our kids, we kind of created a culture where our kids liked to go play in the woods, right? Whether we
Yeah.
played at creeks or the lake or on the
Love that.
trails. I mean, we did it all
That's
the
great.
time. Yeah. But then they got older, right? They, getting started getting into teenage years, and that becomes a little bit different. You don't always force your kids to do the thing that you're doing, and you give them a little bit more independence. And
Yeah.
so, some of them, were just not interested for sure in like running or eating like we do. That's that one's a
Yeah.
harder one for sure. Um,
Right.
but then some of them, like my daughter, she eventually joined cross country. She stopped running for a little bit, mostly just because she got a job. And then the other day, she calls me up. She says, Mom, I just ran a half marathon. Like she just went to a local park and ran a half marathon. I
Wow.
thought, wow.
That's amazing.
And then, my my older stepson, he came along with my husband and I to a trip to the Grand Canyon. My husband, who is also an ultra endurance runner, he was going with a group of guys to do what they call the rim to rim to rim. So you went from one rim of the Grand Canyon down to the bottom, up to the other rim, back down to the bottom. So you're
Yeah.
50 miles and I don't know, some ungodly elevation gain. I was not going to do that. I was just going to go down to the Colorado River and come back up. Well, my son was going to come with me. Well, then the day before, he said, "No, Dad, I want to go with you. I want to run 50
Wow.
miles and I've never run more than six." So he did, and he led the pack. 17-year-old with a group of men who train all the time to run. He's never run more than 6 miles, and was a good runner, but he just up and decided, I'm going to run 50 miles through the Grand Canyon, and he did. So things like that. Yeah, you can see the impact on your kids for sure. Not all the time, but it's there.
Modeling through your actions. So obviously you've probably come across some moments of resistance or maybe rebellion, partly maybe because of like, I don't know, teenage angst or,
Yeah.
whatever, right? But here's a critical question. What's in your pantry?
What's in my pantry? Like, do you mean literally, like the foods that are in my
Yeah.
pantry?
What do you have in there?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. So the what I would call the plant-based food groups, right? You've got vegetables and fruits. Well, your vegetables are in the fridge, but vegetables and fruits, whole grains, nuts and seeds and beans. That's what's in my pantry. Oh, and we'll say tofu is in the fridge. Um, so there are maybe occasionally we have something like ramen or macaroni and cheese. I'll make a homemade
Uh-huh.
macaroni and cheese, but there's really not a lot of that. And so my kids, they go back and forth between houses, right? So they'll come
Sure.
to our house and be like, "You don't have anything to eat," and I'm like, "It's full. The pantry and the fridge are full."
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. So no Doritos, no crackers, no chips, or nothing like that, huh?
Yeah, I don't think so. Occasionally, like maybe a little fun-sized bag of chips will end up in there because they get it from everywhere else, right? There's vending machines and other people that
Of
want
course,
to shove candy at them, and so sometimes it's just hard to keep it out.
right. So, and obviously for the viewer, I do want to disclose that anything that we talk about here is our own personal opinion, and if people have questions about supplements, and this applies particularly to the next topic, which is bioactive natural peptides, something that you're involved with. So tell me about what led you to look into bioactive peptides. You talked about it briefly,
Yeah.
and but let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, so interestingly, one of my a person who's now a friend who used to be one of my nutrition clients, she was into peptides, and I knew that she took some, and I just didn't really pay much attention, honestly. And then one day I got curious and I asked her about them, and I had not heard much about peptides other than you see advertisements everywhere for synthetic injectables, right? Which sounds scary, and I still think it sounds scary.
Yeah.
So I asked her about this and learned that there are organic, made from food, or extracted from food, natural peptides that can survive the digestion of the stomach. So that's been a problem for a while. There have been people, companies that have come out with orally taken peptides that do not survive the digestion in the stomach, but these do.
Mm.
Um, and she introduced me to this one in particular because it was really good for muscular recovery. So the statistics around this, we're talking about like 4 times better muscle protein synthesis than whey protein alone, 5 times better than creatine, 6 times better than leucine alone. We've got
Right.
147% better muscular recovery, and again, it's all natural. And
Yeah.
so I was listening, and so I started doing the research, I started Googling peptides, and I'm like, this looks terrible. And she's like, no, no, no. You have to know what to Google, right? And so I start putting
Right.
in, natural, bioactive,
Right.
the name of the company, though, and I got much better results and found and started digging into the research. And was just very impressed, right? Um, I learned more about, some natural bioactive peptide alternatives to things like, Ozempic and some other, the synthetic, um, weight loss peptides, right? That, you know, can work for sure. And they really can help people, in a lot of cases. I do think that, however, they carry a huge risk of, up to 60% of that weight loss being muscle loss, which you're just,
Right.
and bone density loss. You are just accelerating aging at that point. And friends that I've had that are taking it, they're like, yeah, this weight loss is great, but I don't feel good. I don't feel good anymore. I did at first, but now I don't feel good. And so anyway, so I
Right.
started diving into the research. I take this one peptide in particular, and man, I'm telling you, like, it took a little bit of time. I'd say in about 2 weeks, I saw some energy gains from it. But you give it about 4 to 6 weeks, that's when you start seeing the long-term gains. And for me, again, training for a 200 miler, being in school, running 3 businesses, being a mom, being a wife, can you do life without these? Sure. But being, and all that, being a woman in my 40s, I'm just, I
Right.
had big goals, right? And so this was the thing that for sure, like I said, helped me to really successfully be on a fiber only diet. And
Mm.
also, I just had a whole new world of energy that, again, was completely natural and completely good for you, but just this whole new world of energy to do the things that I wanted to do. And then certainly as an athlete, at that level, just to be able to recover, to do your workouts and to wake up the next day almost like you didn't do it. Well, like you did it, but that you're stronger, not that you're depleted and worn out. But to wake up the next day and truly just be recovered from it. So I was definitely sold on that one. And then I tried a few others as well that just help give you more restorative sleep, right? Like it doesn't make you drowsy or have the side effects, of some sleep aids out there. It just helps you have better REM, right? So
Wow.
again, you're helping just to reset your body and help it lower that inflammation and lower that cortisol on top of what you're already doing for your body with that fiber first diet, with your exercise. Prioritizing sleep. I run into this all the time. Women are like, okay, I'm prioritizing it, but I can't fall asleep.
Right.
And what I would say is first, okay, eating more plants, it does help your sleep. As soon as I was doing fiber first, healing my gut, I was able to fall asleep. When I upped my training and started experiencing more inflammation and higher cortisol again, and I went fiber only once again, I went back because was starting to get issues with sleep again. I went back, just falling asleep like a baby. How many women in midlife are saying I fall asleep like a baby? They're not.
Yeah.
So first doing that, and then certainly, especially when you've got these maybe high you're the high achiever, right? And high performance kind of goals, being able to have that deeper sleep is really helpful. So, especially for those who are putting in the work and having a hard time seeing results, for those high
Mm.
achievers, high performers, who still want to feel calm and present and still feel like a human being in the midst of a busy high performer kind of life, absolutely. Fiber first, even fiber only, consider that. And then those bioactive peptides can help give you an edge that you haven't had.
Hmm. Lauren, how do you unwind?
Oh, several ways. So first, I go into the woods for sure. Love being in the woods. I have a daily meditation practice. So really, I mean, it's how I start. I'll tell you exactly how I start my day. And so I unwind before I ever even start my day. Okay. So when I
Yeah.
wake up, I have a peptide and I stretch for about 15 minutes. I mean, I never do not start my day that way. So I
Yeah.
have to take that time to stretch. If my kids are with me, I'm helping them get out the door after that. But then I go on my run or I do my workout and I come back and I meditate and deep breathe, and make sure I do not start my work day without doing that first. So
Yeah.
before I ever get started with all of the busyness, I unwind. And then at the end of the day, yeah, I do. Eating a fiber first diet helps you sleep better, so you're already preparing yourself to unwind. And then I
Right.
stretch a little bit at the end of the day. Yeah, that's how I unwind.
Do you rigorously keep track of how much sleep time you get?
I don't. Yeah, I'm not a tracker actually. I know people that like to do wearables and stuff and sleep. I
Yeah.
don't.
You can get crazy, right? I mean, I have my iPhone, I have my Apple Watch, and I wear them when I go on the treadmill. I do the 3-12-30 workout on the treadmill. That's kind of the extent of my running, if
Wait,
you
what is
will.
3-12-30?
So I take the treadmill and I put it at 3 miles per hour, and
Mhm.
I do it 30 minutes at 12% incline.
Oh, okay, 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 cool.
Yeah. So it's something that I picked up, and it's something that I can do. It only takes 30 minutes because I can do it before I go to work.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's crazy. I can get really entangled in tracking everything. And, I go to my doctor and, he has this very fancy scale, and it tells me exactly how much muscle mass and fat percentage I have and all of that. So it's interesting. You don't track it. How many hours of sleep do you get?
So I would say tracking in general, not tracking, that's a little intentional for me because I would easily get caught up in the numbers.
Yeah.
So, certainly when I go on a run or workout, like I'm always wearing my Garmin. If I forgot to put my Garmin watch in the car, I'm turning around to go get it because like if I didn't have
Yeah.
it, the workout didn't happen. So, I mean, I can for sure be a nerd and I in that way. And I am the one, I mean, I'm checking my watch, I'm checking um, my pace and things like that. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I try to put a limit on it because I know that I will get caught up in it, and there's
Mhm.
just a point where I just need to just let it be what it is, and not worry about the numbers.
Sure. Question for you to add to all my other questions. Your parents, how much of a factor were they in your decision to pursue the lifestyle that you have?
Yeah, I'd say a huge factor, but maybe not in the way you would expect. So yeah, to be honest, I've spent a good chunk of my life trying to unlearn a lot that I learned from childhood, and I appreciate my parents, and I think we all do the best that we can. I really do, but I think that I've come to have very different values, and so I've spent a lot of my life searching for who I really am, that purpose, the kind of mindsets that I want to have. Um, so yeah, I would say I've very much forged my own path in that sense. Certainly have been influenced by my parents. I will say actually, yeah, I would say that my dad and my stepmom are very, very active, and I would go see my dad and my stepmom every summer when I was a kid. And yeah, they were always on the go. And also, in my experience as a kid, was just that it was a very positive thing, right? Like, so when I say on the
Yeah.
go, I don't mean like in this toxic kind of busy way. I meant that, they were just active and they valued being active. And they valued generally eating healthy and eating at home. Yeah, and so I did really take that. So, my dad was a marathon runner when he was a little bit younger. So there was a little bit of me that felt like when I started running, that I was kind of following in his footsteps a little bit there. So that was pretty cool.
Sure.
Yeah, and yeah, I admire them a lot. Again, they stay very active. They're into, I think they're late 70s, early 80s now, and just again stay very, very active. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, they're generally just very healthy because of it. So that has actually, yeah, they have had a huge impact on my path in that sense.
Mhm. I guess we can go like in one of three different routes with our parents. We can either emulate them, improve upon their parenting, or go the opposite way of how they parented us, right? Or some sort of a blend in between. And so that's a very interesting take on that. Lauren, as our time draws to a close, I'd like you to tell my audience how they can find you and what kind of service you provide. I know you're involved in the bioactive peptides, correct?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, this is your opportunity to talk about that and tell us all about what you do and how people can find you.
Yeah, for sure. So, my website is Lauren B. Callahan. B is in Brianna, that's my middle name. So, laurenbcallahan.com. My Instagram is also Lauren B. Callahan. And Facebook also Lauren Callahan, so you can find me on any of those places. If you go to my website, you'll see an opportunity to get in contact with me to do keynote speaking or to do a workshop. I usually work in corporate environments. And then also to check into what I do as far as nutrition consulting. And then if you are interested in learning more about peptides, just find me on Instagram or Facebook and send me a DM. And we can just have a conversation and kind of explore it and see what feels right.
Got it. Got it. Well, this has been a great conversation, Lauren. I learned a lot, and it's one of the fun things about podcasting is I get to talk to so many cool people with interesting backgrounds and who can do things that I can't do, and so. But I can give anesthesia, and I bet you can't.
That's
So,
very true.
yeah, good. Okay,
Very
so I have
true.
one. But it's been a pleasure talking to you. And do you have any questions for me?
No, thank you so much. I love this too. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. I love getting to chat with people on podcasts because I just feel like I meet a new friend, right? Um, yeah, yeah. So this has been really great. Thank you.
That's awesome. And everyone that I've talked to has actually become part of my network of, friends and people that I can reach out to and
Yeah,
as a resource. And so it's been really great, a great experience for me. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So
thank you, Joseph.
yeah, thank you so much, Lauren.